Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Hashem, Barakah, Kudash. Brothers and apostles and elders and ravens as well, and shalom to the whole elect. For Hebrew Israelites, were I once again to prophesy downfall of this kingdom according to the Bible. Right? Presently we're in the year 2022, the year turning up, or the turn up, and basically, yeah, man, when the day of the Lord draweth nigh, man. Everything that's going on right now is in accordance with the biblical prophecies outlined what our Lord told us to look for. We're seeing them appear before us in these last days. You had Macron and Putin sit down together and basically say, you know, that there'll be no winners in the world, nuclear World War III. And Putin basically outlining that, look, you know, these men aren't winning. And the main thing, when you really look at it like on paper, you know, dealing with the EU, NATO, Russia, China, all these things, on paper it makes no sense why you have the European nations, you know, the EU, siding with America, because they stand to lose more. They stand to lose more messing with America, all right, as opposed to, or I say it's more favorable for them to mess with Russia and China. Why China supplies most of their products, their supplies in terms of business and commerce, and then you also have the energy. Energies come from where? Russia, right? The gas and all these different lines. But America is really fulfilling the prophecy of the book of Revelation 17 chapter. That basically they'll have the same mindset until the time where they'll hate the whole. He will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. This is more just something more recent before he went online. Because as far as with, you know, with the world, and this is for like basically for Israelite men, because as far as with our job on the planet Earth, serving Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh Shai, we're basically got our job to do is to fulfill the duties we've been given. As such, what? You can only have one master. And that's the thing, is the world is another master. Esau is another master. And that's what Jacob got tangled up in. They'll get caught up in all the webs and nets. But they don't see what, you know, Brother mentioned. This place is coming to an end. There's going to be a thermonuclear Third World War, where you're going to have all these nations going against each other. They'll get to the point where this will be fired and all the earth has its current age is going to come to an end. And that's the thing that only is been revealed unto the prophets. That's something only those that serve Yahweh Hashem Yahweh can see. As such, that's why it's like you won't get caught up in the world. You're not going to get tangled, because you're just going to know, like, yo, this shit's done. This shit's around. Meanwhile, when you're out there, and it's like the worship, well, I read the last psalm says, you cannot serve the Most High in mammon. Mammon is why? That's that money worship. And that's one of the big spirits, the big vibrations they have out there. They have that worship of money, that worship of certain kinds of lifestyles. But then the people that live in those lifestyles, a lot of these guys are fucking off of themselves, man.
Jumping off buildings, overdosing on
hard drugs, dude. Like, what the life, like, if that lifestyle is meant to be so great, why are these guys in such a hurry to leave it behind? Because why? Because it's not all the glitters is gold, man.
They didn't read the book of Ecclesiastes, because that's a key example. That's why it's in the Bible, right? The book that our Heavenly Father gave unto us. That's why it's part of it, right? Our Lord, right, for the previous lifetime was known as King Solomon. He wrote down 12 chapters of solid, you know, facts dealing with monetary gain in the world, ability to do anything, you know, women in abundance, a level of women like brothers have never seen. Do you know what I mean? It's like that. And that's for you to know that, look, like, this ain't shit. He basically, you know, rounded it all off by saying, you know, 12th chapter basically speaking about like serving the Lord in your youth, and when the days drawn up nigh. And then also he says that, look, all this, he said it's all vanity. And the main thing in life is to serve the Heavenly Father, keep his commandments. That's it. Like, there's nothing out here. You can try and find your level of comfort in the world, but you're just going to be chasing shadows, man.
Yeah.
It's like trying to look at your shadow. You don't turn and catch your shadow in the same place before you turn. You ain't going to do that, man. Let me read this.
Micah 2:10 says what? Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with sore destruction.
And how do you depart? How do you arise and depart? It's mental, right? You have to take your mind out of the mindset because it don't profit you. It won't profit you in the kingdom to come. But when you go to the book of 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, it tells you that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of his followers. Alright, so our mind has to be into what's to come, alright? And basically, rise you depart, and more so if you feed into this world, just as I mentioned in 2nd Ezra 6 chapter, you're basically gonna die in this place, man. Alright, it's gonna corrupt you with art of corruption. And that's what you're gonna find is happening to many men that basically fed into this system. And it brings to mind, I always butcher this verse, man, but basically, he that seeks to keep his life shall lose it, and he that loses his life for my sake shall keep it. Because basically, you're gonna have people try and hold on for their life, for the world, for the life that they have in this world, and they're gonna realize that in doing so, they're gonna lose themselves, man. It's gonna end up with death. Hey, dealing with the vaccine. A lot of people are taking the vaccine, but they say it's gonna have 3 years. They don't know that there's HIV, Ebola, right? Different viruses that we place in the vaccine, right? And those things are gonna take effect over the next 3 years. They're gonna then they're gonna have all forms of health difficulties and whatnot.
Yeah,
right?
they're basically you've trusted in the wrong source. And we read this, John 10 and 10, the thief cometh not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. So 3 hours show, that's come for what? So that we can have life. Because as far as it's like otherwise, how you can have life? Are you really living? Like, is this even life out there? Are you really living? Like, what kind of experience are we having? Because as far as, especially if you're a Jake, you're in this world, this is basically you're on the bottom, man.
Hey, you already said it, like, bro, there's elites that are getting strung out on drugs, they're jumping off buildings, and they got the world, and the world is their oyster, basically. So it shows you how much of a shit smoke this world is in, man. Hey, I didn't even know, I just found out this guy, he's still on the same topic, but he had the English Terrier, right? And then you got the English, and now you got the Bull Terrier. I might be butchering the name. But basically, that's that name, that fucking, the dog with the fucked up nose. You know, like with the fucked up nose. Can't breathe. Not the one with the flat nose, but the one with the big long nose, innit? So basically, what's happened, what I found out, is they posted one from 1916, and they said, like, this is the modern day version. And basically, the way that it got to that was by inbreeding. So I was reading the comments, so like, the dog's still like this in India and Pakistan. So they didn't fuck up the dog by doing some mad form of breeding. They basically kept it the same.
So for vanity, basically. But that's the thing. That's of the world. There's no understanding in it. It's gross darkness. Because there's even those sausage dogs. There's like ones where they bred to the point where the back broke, man. They can't even walk because they got them so fucking long. It's like, bro, what the hell are you like that? And that's the thing is, that's treatment of the beast. It's like if you watch any factory that Esau runs for any meat product, that shit is an inhumane, unholy abomination, man. What's going on in there? It's all forms of madness. That's why it's like it's the guys, you know, saying like, oh, you should go vegan because they're abusing that. They got a point. Them animals are getting fucking absolutely decimated, man. Them animals are in hell. Them animals are like, feeling like Jake's feeling, man. Man are living in cages. Then they get strung off and get electrocuted and fucking suffocated, and their brains boiled out whilst they're still alive. But, like, and that's how you're gonna be dealing with fucking animals, man. That makes no sense. Man eating pork. Like, bro, you watch the video, pigs getting fucking suffocated and they're losing their minds. They're screaming and losing their minds before they fucking die. I'm like, bro, what? First thing you're meant to eat no pork anyway. And it's like, what the level of toxins and all forms of unhealthiness will be in that because of the way it was slaughtered. It's gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's why it's like everyone's in darkness. People ain't out here with any form of understanding.
Quick precept of what you said. Proverbs 12 and 10. A righteous man regardeth the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel.
Yeah. Sure. That a righteous man will regard the beast. And that's the thing. Is these are things of like basic. If you're on the planet Earth, you know you see the sheep. You're gonna be just, and this way you're gonna fucking like roundhouse kick the sheep, man, or break its leg and watch it pull around. But that's I remember they had the video where they had like I think it was RSP. I can't remember one of these fucking animal organizations. They had Pamela Anderson talking about it, and then afterwards it showed like in KFC, in the American KFC factories, they were just fucking kicking the chickens around. They were just abusing. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, you guys got demons on you, man. What the fuck is wrong with you?
What did you think? What did you think about Zuma that come out this week?
I heard about it.
Because I see all the memes and I didn't really understand. Then I looked into it, I was like, oh. There was one footballer that come out, he put out a good point, because you have people saying, yeah, you should be fighting like Zion, like you should be able to play football together, blah, 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 blah. But he basically broke it down and said, look, there's people that's done worse things than him. And he put it to racism. He said, yeah, footballers that says some racist shit, and they got, you know, they got a slap on the wrist, a couple games, and all that to play. And there's no uproar about that. Do you know what I mean?
What do you do?
He kicked his cat. Like,
fucking you go flying.
I don't know, I ain't watching the video. He done some
there's a video.
Like, it's like, yeah, this generation is with the video, yeah, that shit. So he's on this snap, I think he just like, his cat or something like that. But basically, like, yeah, he broke it down and said that, this is the time we're living in. It's crazy, you know?
That's the thing. Well, it's like,
he's probably doing that for clout as well. It's a Jake.
Yeah. No, I saw the figures. But okay, let me read this. Jeremiah 51 and 5 says, "For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah of his power, of the Lord's power of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord Yahweh's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense." So yeah, we're meant to be in the mindset, spirit of basically fleeing out of Babylon. We're not trying to engage, we're not trying to grow ourselves or build within Babylon. We're thinking about in heavenly treasures. We're thinking about making sure that we're within Yahweh more and more. That's what we're trying to abound. We're holding conversations about this place ending, man, about the time to come, about the judgment, man, about the things that are going down. That's what we're meant to be meditating on, because that's what everyone else is in the spirit of Babylon. You talk to them when you're talking about football, they're going to be talking about the next fashion line that's coming out, they're going to be talking about some shit that happened on social media, they're going to talk about Zuma kicking his cat, they're going to be talking about Isaiah, what's his name, Rashad, doing all forms of criminality. I didn't even know what it was about. Like, I watched someone just say, like, oh, hey, I heard there's a video floating around. Like, has anyone got it? And I was like, I didn't know any context. You didn't even mention any context. Then there was a link right under. I watched it. I was like, what the fuck is this shit?
Was
then
it like, I heard it was like a fucking orgy or something like that.
I don't even know, man. I watched like a second and a half.
And you knew
That
where it
shit,
was. And you
that
said,
shit
yo,
destroyed it. Like I was that fucked my morning up. I was like, it was on some other guy's Twitter. I was on Twitter to search for something else. Then I just saw that. I was like,
yeah,
what's this?
you get the trend.
Then it was just like, I was like, what the fuck is that? And then it was like, oh, there's a video here. I was like, what? Did someone kill someone? I was like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
And then I was like, bruh. Then I scrolled down for the context, and I was like, this is.
But like that
vile.
day, I don't know what happened, man, because Nelly had a video out.
Yeah,
I
people
heard about
getting
Nelly,
exposed.
and
I
I
heard
heard
Nelly
about
as well.
Little Fizz as well. I was like, yo, what is going on?
I was like, these
I
guys
just saw the
getting out.
memes, and then I was like, okay, what? I don't know.
All forms of man, but that's why what among my people Israel found wicked men, man. There's wicked ass niggeros all up and down. But why? It's because they're in the mind of Babylon, man. And that's the thing is, a lot of that is just that's why it's like people say like, oh, you know, would you suck a dick for £1 million? All that kind of shit. Because why? Because they're basically thinking like, it's like, okay, to get what you want to get within the society, how far are you willing to go? And that's really the mindset. That's why they'll get into all kinds of man, like beans, man. Fucking beans video, Jesus Christ. Like former man, all like these drinks out there. They're violating, man. They're done. They're off their farm with the devil.
Let me read this. It's Luke 17 and 28. Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. In that day he shall be upon the housetop. He which shall be upon the housetop, and his stuff in the house, let him not come down to take it away. And he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Remember Lot's wife. That's what it is. It's, hey, we're basically the mindset we ought to have. We're taking our mind out of this world. Obviously, we have to still be here. That's why you don't see us like jumping on planes and flying to different countries. Because what Job 9 and 24 tells you, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Alright? So it's that simple. It's as simple as the mindset we ought to be in. We draw ourselves from this kingdom. Put ourselves in the mind of a man that's going to be in a chariot with you, have a shy basically. Remove yourself from it. What is it going to be like in the kingdom? How, in order for you to be New Jerusalem that cometh down from heaven, what mindset do you have to be in when you come down from that chariot, right? And obviously we have to rehearse the right, basically be a righteous individual. But what does that require? It requires you rehearsing the righteous acts, doing the things within the law, right? To the best of your ability, in hopes that the Lord will look down and have mercy upon us, okay? So that's only what it's about. And that's why the end was encapsulated by remember Lot's wife. What happened to Lot's wife in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? She got turned into a pillar of salt, man. She didn't make it out, basically. Alright? That was her destiny. She did not make it. So if you don't want to be like Lot's wife, pillar of salt, alright, burnt to a crisp, then you need to get your mind where Lot's mind was to get out of the place.
Isaiah 3 and 9. The show of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. And there's always been a history of fucking freaks, you know, freakism amongst people. And that's these things are getting exposed because why? Now is the time when because now it's the time in the end, man. It's basically where the legs being made bare, all the lies that this place has been built upon, those things are getting exposed. All the guys that have been lauded as heroes and everyone's aspiring to be like that, they're the true spirit of them is being revealed. That's the thing, it's just as Esau's devilish nature has been shown to the world, people really are understanding the level he's operating on. It's the same among all facets of the world, man. Where it's like, and this is the thing is, people are basically looking at it's if people are not engaging with it, people are like, no, you know, it's all fake. They're basically just trying to cover their ears and hide their eyes and basically just be like, no, I'm not trying to engage with having to think about anything too deeply. And that's the mindset of the people that are gonna jump on that correctly. Because everything, you look at everything, it's like everyone. Why'd you have like the whole year where it was just like everyone's getting revealed the whole they're going around, you know, women being forced to suck this guy's dick, this got a drug. And it's like, oh, you know, I was thinking he ramrodded me when I was, you know, when I thought we were just gonna have a cup of tea. Like, you know, all these things, because that's how the place operates. And that's the thing, that's how it's always been.
Yeah.
It's been like that. But what everyone's like, no, you know, there's things like child actors. Why the hell are these guys become fucking drug-addled, completely out of their mind?
Yeah, why don't they have a career when they're adult?
A lot of them would just fuck off out. There was I remember they did one where she did like a whole YouTube kind of thing, talking about how her mum, like there was a girl that was in one of the Disney shows. I can't remember the name right now. I think it was iCarly. It was like she was like the second girl in there. Well, a good example of the Disney show is fucking Miley Cyrus. That's like product number one. Because as soon as she got out, she was just doing all kinds of madness. Because why? Having to engage with that environment, they do all kinds of criminality. What's her name? The Harry Potter bitch. Hermione. What's her real name? Emma. That's the one. Her as well. It's like she came out. She'd been single for like the last fucking 6-7 years, man. She was a mess. And it's like, you already know the way people were like, when she was like 14, everyone was talking about, oh yeah, when she turned 18, blah, blah, blah. Them guys were, you know, they were lining her up, man.
Shut up, when I was working in Oxford camp where Marvel's as well. Yeah, like she came in one day, I remember she had a boyfriend. That was like 2007, 2006. 2006. I want to work. That's when you came in. Oh, so she would have been like 17.
Something like that,
yeah. I remember I said, this drughead bitch.
And that's the thing, it's like, why? You engage with that environment. There's a quote from Dave Chappelle. Because like even he came back to Hollywood, he ain't really fucking with Hollywood, he's more fucking with Netflix and just kind of doing his own thing. He's trying to not really engage with the whole beast. You know, but then he's basically done anyway. Like you got to deal with the beast to a certain extent. But as he said, like, oh, I think he was talking about Martin Lawrence, where he bugged out saying like, oh, you know, Hollywood, the way they're talking about, like, saying, oh, Thingy's crazy. They're saying, oh, Lauryn Hill's crazy. It's like, you know, maybe these guys aren't crazy. Maybe they're just like, that's their reaction to the environment. It's fucking Hollywood that's a little sick. And then it's coming out more and more. That's what goes down there. All forms of madness. People are bugged out. It's why. That's the spirit of the place. And they declare their sin of Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. That's really what ends up going down, man. Esau's now made a world where it's like you can be in with all those different letters of alphabet people, and like now you're gonna feel, you know, everyone's gonna be accepted. Everyone's gonna be, oh, we're so proud, you're so stunning and brave. But you've rewarded evil unto yourself. People have worked out, man. It's like some people on Twitter. One guy sent me a screenshot of like a guy's bio on Twitter, and this guy was advertising that he was fucking abused as a child. And I'm like, what? I was like, is that like that's cool? That's how you're gonna describe yourself. You're gonna like say you sign up for a job, and then someone goes on Twitter to check out your Twitter account. They're gonna say I'm a child sex abuse survivor. I'm like, bro, what that? Like, who needs to know the details? But that's why it's because people are bugged out, man. All kinds of fucked up shit's happening. Don't have to deal with anything, man. I'm like, anyone that's like been room for child sex abuse and they're part of the alphabet people, I'm like, that's a mess. That's a whole mess, man. Someone abused you when you were younger, now you're like, yeah, you know, that's why I choose to sexually identify. That don't make no sense, man. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. yeah, that's the thing. This judgment's going to come, and that's why a lot of it will happen through what? Through pestilence, through disease, through so a lot of them will off themselves, man. That's why it's like I think the suicide rate for those in the T of the alphabet people is like 48%, which is absolutely astronomical when you think about it. Like a fucking 48, almost half of them are off of it. Like, what the fuck is going on there? But then that shows. But then meanwhile, you're saying, these are perfectly safe people. We need to listen to their every desire and need. That make no sense. They're out of their minds. Verse 12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. And that's a spectacular example of describing a black household, man. Yeah. After you had the Willie Lynch letter, throughout slavery, you had the deconstruction of the black household, which continued on. That shit continued on. You go into America, it was doubled down on by the what's it called, the women's liberation movement, where they basically had black women so-called liberated from their abusive black husbands that were roundhouse kicking them in the kitchen, drop kicking them to do the laundry, like elbow dropping them when they didn't want to have sex. Apparently that's what was going down. They'll liberate from that and allow to destroy the minds of their children afterwards, and for generations to come.
And this is the thing, it's like, what everything you said, that highlights the negatives of that situation. Like today, modern day society, you can have a woman choose a husband and still get sexually abused or beat up or physically abused, domestically abused. So the reality of the situation is, that's part of life. There's some fucked up people in the world.
Yeah, you ain't gonna be able to.
You ain't gonna be able to escape it, man.
But, and the thing is as well, it's like that whole mindset it was created. It's like it's even factually based. Like, well, how many? The thing is like as far as actual men and women, like just roundhouse kicking, physically abusive, is few and far between. And anyway, as well, it's like the brother mentioned, it's a lot of like women will pick partners where they've chosen that relationship based on fucking dreams and cotton candy. There's no reason that went into it. There was no their father wasn't consulted. Their father probably not around to consult. Older brothers weren't consulted. Like other family members, maybe uncle wasn't consulted. There was no masculine input. So it's like she's just like, he makes her feel good, and that's it. But that's in that whole mindset, basically, of the world, that carnal mindset of self-satisfaction. But it says what? As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee, cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. That's another thing. This leadership, the gates of Jake, that shit's all been destroyed. Jake's done it out there. That's why what? They're leaning upon Esau. They're leaning upon the world. They're basically looking at feeding into the whole system and hoping that there'll be some place in there for them. But that's the thing, is this place, there's nothing to be gained out there for Jake. Anything you're gonna get is gonna be a consolation. And they're still gonna hate you. That's a good example of Zoom. These guys, these footballers are meant to be heroes. They're meant to be free lions and all this. The whole England's coming together to cheer them on. Then there's a skit that some Jake made, man, about just like when what was it? Was it? I think it was last year. The world MB bans. The world, like when the penalties happened, like, come on, Sacco! It's like, everyone was in the pub, they were cheering them, they were British. Then as soon as they missed, it's like, fucking black monkey! It's like everyone started fucking switching it on them. Oh, bro, if you go on Twitter, I remember the racism on Twitter was legendary that fucking afternoon, man. When they missed them penalties, black people reverted to being monkeys and wogs, man. It was legendary, man. Man put his goddywog in his window, man. That same fucking afternoon to let them know. Because why? That's reality. Jake is a vessel wherein there's no pleasure. There's no pleasure, man. They even keep you about for some form of entertainment. They ain't really trying to fuck with you like that. And that's the real, man. You got some? I got something. Okay. Isaiah 14 and start from verse 3. It says, "And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord Yahweh shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from thy hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve." And that's another thing. It's going to be Yahweh Shem Yahushua that basically gives us that rest. That will be the one to give us that capability to actually be at ease. But that's going to happen within the kingdom. That's going to happen after the judgment. But until then, there's going to be no rest, man. There's going to be no ease. We're on the cusp of what
our temptation, Jacob's trouble.
Yeah, out of temptation, Jacob's trouble. These things are going to be incredibly high pressure situations. That's going to be where ease is going to be out of the window. It's going to be the whole earth, the whole world. Everyone's going to be in a state where they're going to then be not be able to be at ease, man. So how much more so for Jacob? We're already not at ease. This already is a place of rest. So it says what? That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. And that's the thing. That's what it's going to be. When Babylon's gone, it's like, how has the oppressor ceased? Because that's what's happening now. Esau's oppressing the whole earth. All these nations know. Everyone's basically dealing with the same thing. It's evident, it's clear, you can observe, like, yo, this guy is fucking doing a number, man. That's why I mentioned animals before, same for the environment, man. You've been hearing about all kinds of oil spills, the penguins, the the fishies in the sea, the bat, the sea bass, the salmon, the tuna. Them guys are in hell right now. Salmon. They're all fucked up. They're all jacked up. That guys, you got a little nigga trying to swim, a baby dolphin trying to swim. He gets his head caught in a ring, a 6-ring, a beer can plastic holder thing. He's choked out and died, man. That's why everything's all in complete and total confusion and mess. That's why it's like once the actual peace comes, then people are gonna know, oh, this is what it is. Because for now, people, they don't have a barometer. There's no barometer. It's like if you've only ever known cold, you're not even gonna know it's cold. That's just gonna be life. Until you've actually had the warmth, then you have the measure to be like, oh, so this is so this is the opposite thing. So I was actually in a different state. That's the thing. It's like that's why it's like people that grow up in an abusive environment. If they're getting roundhouse kicked every day at home, they're just gonna think that's what everyone's doing. They're thinking, oh, everyone's just getting roundhouse kicked until they go somewhere else and like, wait, yeah, I'm getting roundhouse kicked at me. I'm like, what the fuck? But then, yeah, that's the thing. It's like once Esau's done away with, once his grip over the earth comes to an end, and the earth's taken out of his hand, then people are gonna know, oh, this is rest. Oh, this is peace. Oh, this is order. Because now it's a complete mess and confusion. Everything's flipped upside down. But people, they don't have a measure. They don't know. You break it down to them. You tell them truth. They say, no, that's done. We stopped doing that. They're thinking there's nothing to be gained.
Sirach 33 and 13. As the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him, to render to him as liketh him best. Good is set against evil, and life against death. So is the godly against the sinner, and the sinner against the godly. So, and this is the point. So look upon all the works of the Most High. There are two and two, one against another. All right, and the main plot that we're living in the midst of, Jacob versus Jacob versus Esau, which is good versus evil. We're in an evil time, right? And Esau's at the helm of that. Now, no one's going to really understand until Jacob comes into bullshit, how evil time, like the brother said. But basically, the level of man. It's crazy the level of evil this man portrays upon his earth. Right? There was another point I was going to say, man. It escaped me.
So Isaiah 14:5, the Lord Yahweh have broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. And that's another thing. There's people out here that aren't even saying Esau ain't even ruling over the earth. That's how much it is. The true people rule those guys in the dark. They're not even regarded. They don't even know. You talk to the average person, they might just be like, oh, he's Illuminati or whatever. Beyonce and Jay-Z, right?
But that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say the biggest, the greatest lie ever told is that by the devil was that he convinced the world he doesn't exist. And this is what we're living in. We're living in the midst of a big lie, right? The greatest lie ever told. And no one's ever gonna know that we're in the midst of a lie. The lie is so great. The fabric of society is tied into this lie.
It's built off of it. Yeah, that's a bedrock of what everyone believes. Yeah? That's the thing. It's like people are so ignorant. It's like there's things that people believe is conventional wisdom. Like everyone's accepted it. But it's like you'll leave the Western Hemisphere, and then those things will cease to exist. Those things will cease to exist. People won't deal with them as a normal matter. There's places in the world where you go where it's like for women to be walking around like in
barely
the middle
clad
of the day,
with
like barely clad with no thing. That's a completely alien concept. Some random member of the public might just grab her and then just be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? And just be like, yo, try and take her to a police box and get her sent home.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. These things, people will think, oh, everywhere it's always been like this. That's why Hollywood as well. Because they'll think back in the time, medieval times, the same thing was going down. Bro, it's like back then, it's like adultery as well. Bro, it's like if your wife gets found diddling the fucking the pool boy, or what's the equivalent? The postman, the guy, the guy who looked after the sheep whilst he was out of war.
Oh yeah.
The guy who was looking after the sheep came round to plow her away. If that gets found out, she would have been fucking hung. she would have been beheaded. All kinds of madness would have been done. That's how it went down, and no one would have batted an eye. But that's why it's because now it's a different time. It's a fashion of the times, and that's the thing. It's not the foundation of the scriptures, which is what America's claim to be ruled after. Even in the UK as well. It's like when there's a royal wedding, the Bible comes out. Scriptures be flying out. That's well. There's songs of praise. The apostles were talking about it. They were reading from the Apocrypha, the book of wisdom. The book of wisdom. That's all of a sudden that was coming out. Because why? That's what was meant to be the foundation. Now it's because Esau seen no benefit in it. It's like you throw it behind you. It says what Isaiah 14:6. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. That's the thing. It's like when you're beaten in a continual state, it ceases to matter. It's like if you got kids, the kid's troublesome, you might smack him on the legs 3 times a day. It's gonna get to the point you ain't even gonna feel the sensation anymore. You're gonna have to ramp it up and get the belt out. You're gonna have to step the game up. Or you might have to be like, okay, well you don't like that. Okay, well go sit in the corner and stare at a wall. Then he starts fucking losing his mind. And then like, oh, you're gonna have to diversify the punishments. But that's the thing, it's been so continual. It's become regular. People don't, it's like paying taxes. People don't even know taxes is a thing. It's like passports. People don't even know. Don't think, oh, people have passports in ancient Rome. Like, nigga, please, man. How the barbarians, when the Gauls came to the gates, they flashed their passports. Nigga, please. But that's how disconnected people are from all the things that happened on the earth before. People don't research, they don't look into things, they don't find anything out. This has become all they know. And they think this is the greatness based on what? Because they're just like, oh, well, we got cars and TVs and mobile phones. With even like smartphone, ain't gonna fuck with technology. A detox, doing detox, technology detoxes.
Going off
Because they're
the grid.
going off the grid because for their mental health, they're realizing not having to check for like, oh, you know, someone messaged me on Insta or Facebook, whatever. Not having to be like, oh, you know, always anytime they're just scrolling through their phone just cause. Like they're basically all their addiction to their technology, they're basically finding a treatment for it. Because there's downsides to it. It's like there's advantages, but then there's downsides. And that's a lot of basically within this society, people are thinking that they're not even aware of downsides, man. They've got all kinds of mental issues that stem from their lifestyle they're unaware of. It says, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hindered. That's the thing. Esau's ruling in anger, man. This guy is bringing down the hammer. That's why it's like, the mindset of the people is meant to be, oh, you know, everything's meant to be fine for you to try and go and get anything. You're meant to just go out with signs and just scream at Parliament and hope that they do what you do. I'm like, bro, that made no fucking sense. They're saying like, oh, you know, you could. It's a democratic process. The democratic process is the greatest process because you can just go and scream and tell your representative what you want. I'm like, nigga, ain't know who the fuck is going out there. And anyone under the age of 45 ain't talking to no goddamn representative asking for anything. And even then, it's like they can bring it in. There'll be like 14 people. Like a lot of when you watch when the lesser bills go through Parliament, there'll be like 14 people in there, and then the rest of them on a holiday, man, getting their dicks sucked, man. They're in them parties where Boris Johnson was, man, having chambers, dancing up on some black beauty, man. They ain't thinking about no whatever shit you got to have. It says, yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since that's what I'm saying. If you see the fucking boat police, that's when you know it's game over, man. See, but it says, yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no fella has come up against us. Even the trees, man, gonna be rejoicing. That's why it's like, bro, nature's gonna be rejoicing because it's gonna be arrested. Esau's been taxing it. Esau's been absolutely abusing it. That's the thing. It's like through the Industrial Revolution, Esau found means of which able to harness, you know, technology, electricity, the printing press, all forms of things. But then it's like, okay, at what cost? But there's been no accountants for the cost. They're basically just been like, yo, use it until there's nothing left. Why? Because it makes our lives great. We're able to achieve so much. And then thinking like, oh yeah, you know, we need to just continue. We'll find a way to get onto Mars, and then you know we'll what's the word? We'll terraform Mars, and we'll put an atmosphere on Mars like a total recall, and then everything will be fine. I'm like, nigga, like that. All that shit is vanity, man. That's all madness. But that's why it's like this guy was wicked. He was made for the day of evil. This guy's out here thinking he's gonna go to Mars and tax Mars as well.
No, you're just here to fuck up this world that we live in. Prove that you're the devil, alright?
You got your job. It says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It have raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. And they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? And that's the thing. Right now, Esau is still in that position of providence. He still has the world in his hands. He's still able to exercise his will upon the earth. He's going to be able to push forward his plans, man. He's going to be able to bring in that corruption, man. He's going to be able to make this world just free kick off, man. The missiles are going to fly. But that's the thing. He's got up to a point. He's got things running up to a point. He's got the end, basically, put them his rule. And then what? Shai's going to come in. That's the thing. This is only going to go up to a certain point. And that's why it's all forms of madness. But then, and once that power diminishes, then all these nations are going to be like, oh, hold on. Aren't you just a nobody, man? Aren't you just a red man? And that's really what it's going to be. The true state of Esau is going to be revealed. Right now, everyone looks at him with adoration, man. They're all looking, everyone's aspiring to be like him. They're all wearing his suits. They're all, they're shaving their faces like he does. They're speaking in his speech. They're adopting his mannerisms. They're adopting his lifestyle. Why? Because he's been put at the pinnacle of the earth. Right now, he has the rule. Right now, he has power. And once that ceases to be, all that's going to flip. Just as before, there was a point in time where there were other people that were at the apex of earth. These guys, now you see them on Oxfam adverts with their bobbleheads starving with flies on their eyeballs. Them guys were once at the apex of rule. Everyone in the world was looking to them. They were underneath their vibration. Same for all these other nations. They've had their time, points in time where they had the prominence. Right now is Esau's time. And that's the thing that's why people can't see Esau going down. They're thinking of the Hollywood history where Esau's the only one that's ever been abroad. It's basically moved from one white system of power to another white system. But that's all confusion. Because why? Because first of all, Esau's not white. Secondly, he's only been in power for maybe the last 500 years in and about that region. And what? He's basically going to be in power on a little while longer, a very short space. Then he's gonna. That's all gonna be done away with. It says, "All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows." Yeah, that pomp, that pride, that esteem that Esau has for himself. Right now, Esau's maneuvering like, yeah, he's really thinking he's the shit. And that it trickles down. Any Edomite on the bottom is thinking like, yeah, they're owed a certain something from the world. They have a certain amount of entitlement. They really think that they should be getting the most out of life. They're thinking about their 2 to 3 holidays a year. They're thinking about, they're being able to go out and enjoy the world, going to
city breaks.
Yeah. Informs going to the ice rink, going to they're thinking about enjoying themselves and getting satisfaction from this world. Because why? This is their place. This is their time to rule. But that's only going to go up to a certain point. Because once it hits a point where all this is all the fun and games comes to an end, that's when it's going to be. First of all, the fun's going to end. Then all form of madness is going to come. And this place is going to come to a crashing, thunderous, explosive end. Then afterwards, Jake's going to be in power. The so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians, who are the Israelites, they're the ones who are going to be put into a position of power, starting with Yahweh Shai.
Daniel 4:17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basis of the heaven. And just to the point of what you're saying, that's why I wanted to interject. Because you said the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans rule, and that's because of the true Israelites in the Bible. Someone may say, well, I could never see that happen before. There was a time in history no one could ever see Esau rule in his kingdom. No one would ever see. If you would have said, oh, there's planes that fly from one country to another, could anyone could they imagine that? No. These technological advances and everything that's happening is for the means of the Heavenly Father establishing his judgment upon the earth. That's what it is. Everything we've spoken this many a time with the nuclear power, nuclear energy. The reason why that's an offshoot or like a side effect, a symptom, so to speak, of the necessity of ICBMs being created for the destruction of America, man. But then the technology is also being utilized in other means. But it's all to what? To the power of the Heavenly Father.
Power and judgment.
That's it. It's for his will.
Right.
Job. No, go ahead.
Job 31. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision.
Yeah, we mentioned about the basis of men. And the brother read the book of Isaiah before, dealing with they that are younger than I, right? Women being our oppressors. The younger than I is talking about Esau, Edom. Because all nations come from the children of Israel, right? We go through the chosen lineage going back to Adam. All those men in the chosen lineage are basically chosen, right? Another word for the chosen, Israelites, basically. So they're being determined as the Heavenly Father's men. So any other nations that come out of them, they're younger than that. They are children, but more so what it's speaking to is who? Esau, right?
Whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock.
Yeah, man, because of the history Esau has with bestiality, right? Now, even now, you have this whole play that's been made dealing with love is love. Yes. I was thinking about the way here, actually. Because now they say love is love, right? Anyone can love anything. And I mean, you know, a man can love his dog. A man can love his child. But then when now you want to create a sexual relationship, that's where you basically, that isn't love, that's confusion. That is confusion. Because you're entering into a realm of things that are not designed to be administered, basically. And you had there was a video where you basically had like a inbred family that lived in some rural part of America. And you had the journalists basically go over there and provide them food. And they were inbred for generations to the point where their children couldn't come out, man. They basically lacked the ability. They basically turned into beasts, animals, running on each other, they live in circumstances, they couldn't clean after themselves. And that was down to what? Inbreeding. But that was love. At some point, that was love within itself. They loved each other. That brother and sister, they felt a burning desire to one another to procreate. But then now look at their children. Their children are in some bloody, you know, a house that they hold where they shoot each other, they're behaving like animals, where they're an embarrassment to society. Now with this whole thing where love is love, this is generating it where you can say now, okay, two men can love each other, two women can love each other. Alright, cool. So then could a man love his children? Could a man love children? Could a man love animals? Like, where does it stop? You said, could a man love to murder?
Yeah,
you know,
there's no boundaries.
There's no boundaries.
It leads into confusion.
And that's why the Heavenly Father established the boundaries, right?
As well as why Esau won't be allowed to fuck with the dogs, man.
Can't.
Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste. And that's the state Esau was in. It's truly a wonder and an amazement that Esau is now, cleaned up to the point where he's able to rule. If you were to go back into the ancient world and show modern day Esau to the nations all around, they'll be looking like, yo, this cave dweller, this Mount Seir dwelling ass motherfucker, this guy.
Yep.
Like that's
the
crazy.
basis of it.
That's the wonders and amazement. Yeah, how about Shem Yahshua? That's the same thing. If you were to go around the time of the house of David and then show them this is what's going to befall Jacob in the last days, and then give them a vision of some random hood, like, yo, who the fuck are they, man? Because that's how peak it is. That's how much the Lord flipped it. And that's why it's just as it's been flipped, where Jacob was in that glorious state. Well, I'll get the figure out. The Lord can switch it right back, just as easy. Who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief. Yeah, people didn't even want them around, man. They were abhorred.
And a good example to go to when you deal with a so-called Jew, right? There you can pull it up with, data on the internet of how many times they've been, what's the word, not extradited, but they've been kicked out of the country, basically. Where they said, we don't down because of the business techniques or type of things you
Mean
do.
the way they operate.
Yeah, basically, was detrimental to that environment they were in. They said, we don't want you in a fucking place, man. Get the fuck out of here. And that's something they don't like to tell you about that, right? And of course they wouldn't like to tell you that because it doesn't serve them no benefit making you aware of those things. Yeah. Wow.
It's like right next to the camera. That's fucking hilarious.
I might have to grab a rock figure. I thought I was going to film the weapon.
Nah,
He's actually cold. That's why I always forget waterfront just brings up all
yeah, so it's the wind from here.
Yeah.
So it says to dwell in the cliffs and the valleys, in the caves of the earth and in the rocks. And that's Esau's home, man. That's where he feels a comfort. That's why he's built, these concrete jungle, man. That's Esau's, brings him comfort. That's where he desires to be, because that's where he's set up, man.
Because that's even when you deal with going to, it's funny because I was reading, I watched one video about North African empires. But you basically they show cars are near the Caucasus. That's why they hold the name today Caucasian, because it's an old Caucasus mountain. Now, when you go to the book of Malachi, the first chapter, it tells you that he's impoverished and he will return and build up the desolate places. Now, when you look to England's a good place, actually, because the architecture over here is a throwback to the time of medieval Britain, right, and basically the Middle Ages and whatnot. Now you can see the architecture is starkly different. Like we can see over here, we can see on that House of Parliament over there, you can see Big Ben, right?
The way that was constructed was completely different
To the rest of this. When you see the architecture behind us, you can see it's totally different. Well, I wouldn't even. You can see the shard, and I wouldn't even go to that Tower Bridge. When you go over there, the castle over there, you can see that holds a whole different form of architecture, right? But then now, in the onset of modern day period, right, the time of what's it called, Industrial Revolution. Now you see buildings like the Shard. You see these skyscrapers they're building, right? It's just slightly different over there because
it looks so old and stuff.
yeah, and the skyline, there's laws in place. Like the reason why we keep the skyline along here is because from where's that place? Windsor. There's a law that they need to be able to see St. Paul's from Windsor. So when you go to Windsor, you can actually see from there. You can see St. Paul's, and vice versa. Because I watched one video. So St. Paul's basically, quite close by it. But basically, it's been that view of it has been preserved. So everything around it was designed in a fashion where it doesn't. You can only be so high in a certain position. But then America's the best place, man, in terms of building up their desolate places. You go to New York, that concrete jungle, that's breathtaking. That's like, they built this shit, but they just got skyscrapers for days, and it looks like a mountainous terrain, owed to the Caucasus Mountains, owed to Mount Seir, right? And that's really what it is.
So the spirit, man. Back in Isaiah 14, Isaiah 14 and 11, it says, "Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee." Yeah, that's the worms under thee, man. The foundations of Esau, it's all brought out, man. Esau done. Like, he's not going to be able to sustain himself. The whole means and way that this system operates is meant to be unsustainable. There's no means by which it's going to last in the long term. That's why it's like the money. this whole society is basically made for what? Not to be sustainable, man. It's not made to last in the long term. This thing wasn't planned out in a means where they're looking, okay, you know, the next 10,000 years or whatever. It's basically been a live as fast and as hard as possible. Achieve as much, heap as much upon yourselves as you can, and basically enjoy as much as you can in the moment. That's basically been the baseline of it. As such, that's why that's the mindset of the people. Everyone kind of comes out. It's like, whoa, I've got 70 years out here. What? How much am I looking to get in? Then that's why it's like, you know, in the youth, they'll just be like, yeah, just do anything, experience anything, you know, just chase any form of pleasure, do any form of madness, and you know, that's more or less what they're looking to do. It's like if you do that, then it's those things are you basically have to pay for it. Okay, let me read this. So Ecclesiastes 11, and 9. It says, "Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things the Most High will bring thee into judgment. Therefore, remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity." And that's the thing. These, like, being in that childish state of basically having no bounds, of just doing all forms of madness, that's vanity. And the thing is if you're gonna engage in all those forms of madness, then you're basically the judgment's still gonna be required, man. The Lord's still gonna come to you and be like, hey, look, you're gonna basically you're gonna have to pay for those things. And that's really what people don't like understand. They'll be moving in the folly of youth up to the old age, but then they're thinking that, like, oh, you know, they're just gonna die and it's all gonna be over. Meanwhile, afterwards, you've still got the judgment to come. Back in Isaiah, where it says what, Isaiah 14 and 12, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" And that's the thing as well. It's like, even with that Lucifer, people are thinking about Satan, and then they've got that whole idea of what the apostles mentioned, it like Paradise Lost, which is just a novel. That's just some shit that was made up, man. Where he basically just came out of his own mind and made up a whole bunch of nonsense, and then for some reason Christians took it and ran with it. And that's why it's like, even when you talk about the scriptures to people in the world, they'll start bringing shit that's in Paradise Lost. Because why? It's all confusion. When we deal with Lucifer, that means what? Light bearer. And that's talking about for now Esau. Because right now in this kingdom, he's a light bearer. He's what people are following after. He's a light that's guiding this place. But that's going to be flipped, where it's going to be Yahushua. Yahushua is going to be the light bearer, and then he's going to be the one leading the world what Christ does in the kingdom. Starting with the Hebrew Israelites, so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. Starting with them, but then everyone else is basically going to have to be under that same vibration. Everyone's not going to be able to continue with the madness they've been doing. And it's says, "What how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" And that's the thing. These elites from the top down, everyone all around the earth has been weakened. Man. You go back into the time when the time of colonization, and then you'll see all forms of nations, all these different nations have basically been oppressed. They've had their goods taken. They've basically had the whole way they govern and operate themselves changed by the influence of Esau. Esau's basically come over there and set up and done things how he desires, man. And he's had everyone in the mindset that he desired them to be in for the longest. And it was only really after World War II ended that then came, that shift came. And they kind of say like, oh, you know, America kind of switched it to where they no longer colonize, but really it changes the means by which they did it. Because more or less America did it through military means and their trade and military means, where they're forced to engage with the American system of trade, the American military, and they're held to account by the American military, man. And where if they don't want to fuck with them, then they can set up a coup. They can then, you know, put money, put resources behind, not a contender, what they call it, political opponents. It's basically just shifted to a different system. Because it says what? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne, the stars on the most high. And that's the mindset. That's where Esau's been. These elites are basically trying to replace the most high. And that's why you've had the whole shift from like the late 60s, well, the early 60s, late 50s, you had this to where they've basically been throwing religion in the bin, and it's become into all different forms of philosophy and different forms of belief systems that then become the framework by which people live. To where they're just saying, like, oh, you know, they'll be like, oh, you know, that Christianity or whatever, or that Islam, and say, no, that's terrible, that's the worst. Meanwhile, people's belief structure is just based off the system, based on the tenets of the system. They're following after that. They'll basically do, like, more or less have the government as their god, man. And then they'll follow after what's ordained by that government. That mindset will be set by them. And in more modern times, that's been switched to where that's basically pushed and applied to through the media, through what the media people consume, through the media people engage with, social media as well. These things basically set the pace of the mindset of the people. So it says, I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Yeah, sitting upon the people. That's basically what Esau wants. Esau wants to be at the pinnacle in over the people in a higher estate, to where everyone else is on a low level. They're basically following after and living within the way Esau's elites desire them to live, and that goes into what? Into their New World Order plans, man. Them basically bringing the Paragma, bringing that fourth industrial revolution, where they can have technology utilized to then be able to enact themselves as gods on the earth. Because that's really what they're looking to do. That's what they desire. It says what? I will, in the sight of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And that's really what it is. Esau's trying to set himself up in these different places. That's why you all of a sudden got billionaires. You had for the longest Virgin Galactic in the background, but now you got Amazon doing it. You got Elon Musk as well going into space. Everyone's talking about now commercializing space travel and whatnot. But then who's this for? This is for the super elites. Because even they said, like, for space travel, like the cheapest ticket would be 250 grand to just go into the atmosphere. So that's something where that's what the elites are going to be utilizing. And they're saying, oh, over time, you know, it'll get cheaper to where, you know, the average person will be able to afford accordingly. But then, hey, that's the thing. These are things that they're not looking at in that long of a time span. They're looking to utilize these things for their safety when they're bringing about big sweeping changes on the Earth, to where it's going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to choose to go into space. They ain't going to be able to choose anything. They're going to have complete and total control over you. That's what they desire, man. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And that hell's not talking about some subterranean depths where there's an endless fire and, you know, and there's a red guy with a pitchfork poking you continually. That's talking about in the grave, man, in the earth. Because, you know, that form of hell that's taught by traditional Christianity, that's based upon fables, man. Old wives' tales, as they're called. Because that's basically all that esteem, all that pride, all that pomp that Esau has, him really thinking that he's in, you know, going to become like the Most High. All that's going to be brought down, man. He's basically going to be brought into a completely low state. He's going to be returned, you know, to the nobody he was. We were reading about earlier, in Job 30, where he was in the caves, you know, praying, man, among the bushes. It says, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble and that did shake kingdoms? That's how it's going to be. Everyone's going to be like, all of a sudden, they're going to be like, yo, this guy, wasn't this the guy that had the whole earth in his palm, man? Wasn't he at such a level where we couldn't even think to be, you know, to be beside him, man? This guy was so great. He had everyone on the whole earth following and wandering after him, man. That's really the mindset that people are going to be in. Because why? As it is now, where you look at it now, when you go to these international gatherings, you got like the G7, G8s, all these different gatherings, a bunch of Edomites, man. These guys are in high prominent places, you know, making big decisions. Then everyone else, all these other nations are basically clamoring to try and get a seat at the table. They want to partake. Revelation 13 and 3, it says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So yeah, that head that had the deadly wound, that's going back to Rome. Basically how Rome fell and was taken over by Jake, and then went into the Holy Roman Empire, and then the different kingdoms during the Middle Ages. But then what? The deadly wound was healed. That was the time of the Renaissance, when Esau came back into prominence, where he came back into rule and was able to establish his system of rule over the earth again. And it says what? And all the world wondered after the beast. And that's what happened. Everyone's basically been enamored with Esau's system of rule since he came back into power. Everyone's been wondering after the whole system of democracy. Everyone's been looking at it like, oh, you know, this is interesting. The whole means by which rule is done on the earth, everyone's basically become infatuated with it. They've followed after it, man. Everyone's basically dressing themselves up like Esau dressed himself up. They're all wearing suits. They've all got what do they call it, like Senate houses or parliamentary houses, where they have two different houses. Then they have a prime minister or a president. Everyone's basically wandering after the beast. They're all following after the same ways that they teach, the same laws and whatnot, where they're pushing through the same philosophies and mindsets Esau utilizes as well. They're all following after the entertainment. It's just different forms of entertainment. They're conforming to the beauty standards set by Esau as well. They're all following after the same culture, basically, that's been built up within entertainment, mainly in Hollywood. Everyone's basically wandered after, and they're all infatuated with this system. So back in Isaiah 14, then it says, "What they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee." Isaiah 14:16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, "Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms?" And that's the basically the might Esau's got. That might Esau's got. That's a part of why everyone's in war. Because as far as we're talking about like military spending, the military spending in America is like the next 10 nations combined have to be added up to equate to it. As far as technologically, they're far ahead. They've got the most aircraft carriers. They've got the biggest fleets, military submarines, nuclear submarines. What's it called as well, man? The Air Force, Navy, all these different things. They're far advanced. Their weaponry as well, technological means, drones, all these different things. These things are part of that might of Esau, to where all these other nations are looking at it, like, yo, damn, the way they're moving, it's like, who can even compete? Who's on the same scale? Daniel 7 and 20, and it says, "And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows." So it says what the horn that was of the 10, well, it was of the other that came up after, and it says what before whom the 3 fell. That's what Spain, France, and Britain. Those fell before America. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about America. And it says look was more stout than his fellows. Because why? America had the great military prowess. And that's really what a big part of what keeps the other nations at war, and what makes them basically have to respect what America says. So this is what in Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14 and there was 17. It says that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of the prisoners. Yeah, that's made the world a wilderness. You can just look into like we mentioned earlier, all the different ways in which nature is being destroyed and degraded. Even when you deal with something that you would think would had to be dealt with because it's essential. It's like growing food, growing crops. That's something where there was understood during the so-called Dark Ages, during the Middle Ages, when Jake had the rule. They said that crop growing technology basically grew exponentially. The wisdom of how to deal with crops was at its height. And that's why it's like you had crop rotations, you had different forms, different land where they'll move through and utilize different portions of land. Then they had the land Sabbath as well, which is in the law, about giving the time for the earth to rest, so more nutrients from deeper in the soil can come then up to the topsoil. And that was something that was dealt with. But then what you had when Esau came into power, that got thrown in the bin. And that culminated in America, where they basically harvested all the nutrients out to where you had the Dust Bowl, where they couldn't grow any crops because it was all done. There was no nutrients left in the earth. But then what the wisdom was, they went back to, for a time afterwards, crop rotations, and they dealt with it how it was dealt with in medieval times. But then afterwards they flipped. I believe it was it nitrates? This guy just fucking hit his car. It's hilarious. But that's like the third week in a row where someone's fucking bumped into someone else's car. That's legendary. But what was I saying? So with the they went back to crop rotation in America, and after World War II, they introduced, I think it was ammonium nitrate, when they started using fertilizers. Then they found through the use of fertilizers, they could basically ignore having to do crop rotation and having to basically give rest to the earth. But then in the long term, it also resulted in still having side effects afterwards. Because whilst you can force the earth to bear the fruit, there was way less nutrients because there's still no nutrients in the earth. And that's the thing, it's like something that seemed like a great advancement, like there was going to be a great gain from it. But then in the end, it's basically it's not achieving it in its full might. It's only partially attaining the same thing. And then you still have to adhere to the law. You still have to deal with things through the natural means. Revelation 11 and 18, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. Yeah, shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. Because that's the thing, it's the time of the judgment at end. That's what portion of why Esau's getting judged and why this kingdom is going to be brought to an end. Because now is basically Esau's been what? Destroying the earth. That's something that's been going on to a greater and greater rate. Yeah, it's funny, like back in like, what was it, the fucking 80s or it was the 90s where they started like Earth Day and all sorts of different, they were talking about, oh, you need to care for the ozone layer, recycling, that basically all these different means and ways of basically trying to like so-called repair the earth, but they're band-aid fixes. It's not dealing with the core issue at hand, because the core issue is that Esau's in rulership over the earth. That's the main reason why the earth is basically being dealt with how it is, and why it's basically being destroyed and degraded. Esau's moving with greed. But then what? Isaiah 14 and 17 says that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened up the house of his prisoners. And that as well. In America, they what they call a prison industrial complex, where it's essentially a business. They run prisons like a business to make money, to make profit. They're basically utilizing, they're trying to make it run to where each prisoner is costing less and they're making more money. So despite it meaning to be part of a justice system where you're meant to be so-called, it's meant to be reprimanding or teaching people, crime doesn't pay. The whole way the system runs is what? It's another racket to make money. They say, oh, it's so-called, we're teaching them, blah, blah, blah. But then they say, like, the rate of reoffense for people that go into prison in America is a stupendous rate. To then it being like, what the fuck was even the point of throwing people in jail as a punishment? If you're going to have people go in jail and they wax worse, they're going to be around worse criminals and become greater degenerates, or they might fucking get raped and completely abused and have their mind broken whilst they're in there, be completely bugged. What the hell is the point of it? But that's like everything within the system. It's all confusion. So GMS. All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch. Yeah, that's the thing with Esau. Esau is the only one. And it's like the apostles mentioned. It says in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, Esau is the only neighbor of the Israelites. There's no promise of future mercy. The other nations are going to have some form of mercy, but Esau's not going to get that mercy. We get this.
But there's a doctor in their Wednesday, and when we phone them up,
Let me read this. Numbers 24 and 17. I shall see him, but not now. Well, let me start from 16. It says, he hath said, which heard the words of the Most High, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance by having his eyes open. It says, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheph. And Edom shall be a possession, and Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. So yeah, you're going to have basically a star come out of Jacob talking about Yahushua. Then what? Yahushua is basically going to come and bring all these nations into subjection. And it says, well, smite all the corners of Moab. So that's like, Moab's going to get dealt with. These different nations are going to get dealt with. But let me read on. So it says, and out of Israel out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the sea. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. So Amalek, who is of Edom, his latter end is going to be what? That he perish forever. So we can go into Obadiah. And then Obadiah 1 and 18, it says, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall be not any remaining of the house of Esau. That's the end of Esau. Because unlike all the other nations are basically gonna go through 1,000 years of slavery and punishment, and then they're gonna be able to rule over themselves to an extent and still be tributaries. But they're still going to be under the rule of Israel, because Israel is going to basically keep all the other nations in check. But then what for Esau? His end is that he's going to basically be done away with, right? He's not going to be left. There's going to be none of them left. Says what? For the Lord Yahweh has spoken it. And they of the south shall possess the mount of Esau, and they of the plain of the Philistines, and they shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead. Yeah, Esau's land is going to be basically be taken. Because why? It's like even when you go back to the promise that was given onto Abraham, the amount of land that Abraham was given, that encapsulates more than what was the land of Israel before. But hey, that's Esau's going to be done away with. That's really the end. Because why? He's right now. He's got his job. He's basically participating. He's fulfilling what he needs to do. But there's going to be that's all going to come to an end. So it says what? Isaiah 14 and 19, but thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as a raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land, and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. And that's the thing, the seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Read this in Job 20. Job 20:4 says, "What knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment." That's the thing. It's the triumphing of the wicked is short. Esau is basically his whole system. This whole means now this little carnival wheel of folly that he's got going on for now. This is short. In the grand scheme of things, this is real short. This is the little season that Esau needed to be loosed. Because that's all it is. Really now, this is a little season. And it says what? The joy of the hypocrite. Because that's the thing. Is evil basically prospering in the earth only runs for a little while. Because when it comes to the time when judgment's going to take place, hey, judgment's going to take place, man. It's not just then going to all of a sudden. It's going to flip. It's going to be that time of judgment, and then no one's going to be able to escape. That's why it said in Acts 5, where it says, "Watch what you do as touching his men." Because it says what if this work be of the Most High, then there's nothing you can do against it. When Esau's time's up, that's basically what it's going to be the Most High, basically saying like, "Yo, it's done. It's time for you, Al-Shai. It's time for you to go get your kingdom." So there ain't going to be no means. There ain't going to be nothing able to be done against it. So it says, verse 6, "Though his excellency mount to the heavens, and his head reach unto the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, Where is he? He shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night." All of it is there's going to be no pride, there's going to be no esteem. Right now you can go and there's all forms of a good example is the Olympics. You got the Winter Olympics going on. The Olympics, there was the longest period of time Jake brought into the Olympics. That is a whole form of reverence for the what do they call it, the pantheon of gods of the Greeks. That's what the Olympics was for. That was for basically glorifying their idols. And since it's been brought back, it's doing the same thing. That's why you still have the torch basically being carried to the Olympics. Then they light the fire. That's going back to Prometheus, the story of Prometheus and him basically bringing fire from the gods and then giving it to men. Which that's all a fable. That's all idol worship. So it says back in Isaiah. It says what? Verse Isaiah 14:21. "Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers." "Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land, nor for the face of the world." It says what? Prepare slaughter for his children. Because why? This is the thing. The reason it says in the scriptures of what the child basically is going to be held guilty for the sins of the father. But that's because why? Because there's reincarnation in the scriptures. Basically, come back within down the line in the third or fourth generation. Exodus 20:5 says, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord Yahweh, thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." So yeah, basically the Lord brings punishment, utilizing it, will bring punishment further when you reincarnate it, when you come back. That's why you have those that will die in sin. They might not be judged, they might not be corrected when they're on the scene. But then what? The judgment will take place, on the third or fourth generation when they come back in the cycle. When they come back, they might come back with some form of ailment. They might be judged in that means, or it might happen through the period of time when they're on the scene. But hey, the Lord ain't gonna just have it not happen, and that's why it says what? Prepare slaughter for his children, because why? Those children are the same people that committed those acts, they committed those sins, and that's why the whole Esau's number one argument, where they'll say like, oh, holding people guilty, they're on the scene now, but they weren't around 500 years ago, they weren't around 400 years ago. Why should they have to be? That's all nonsense. That's all going to be thrown in the bin. Because why? According to the scriptures, they are. They basically need to pay for those things, and that's the thing. It's Esau's ledger. That's why he's trying to avoid it. Zechariah 11:5 says, "Who possesses slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord Yahweh, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not." Yeah, who possess slay them and hold themselves not guilty. Esau is number one, holding himself not guilty. He's not trying to account for any of these crimes. Anytime you bring up the transatlantic slave trade, you bring up the history of how Esau's dealt with different nations around the world, all the crimes that he's done, where in the time no one's held to account. These things were just like, oh well, they were justified. Then all of a sudden they're just like, oh well, it wasn't me. I shouldn't be held to account for what my great grandparents did, or just it's like, oh, I come from the line of the Irish. I'm not a monk, and that's the thing is. That's why the angels basically going to separate the wheat and the chaff, because then they're going to be those, their line might go back to Jacob. They're not going to be caught in the same judgment as Esau. They're not going to be put to an end. But it's like you're going to have those where they've got chocolate faces, they're black as fuck, but then the line goes back to Esau. Those guys, those tares, they're going to be found out. Isaiah 13:24 says, "Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way." And that's basically what's happened among Jacob. There was a period of time where if someone looked like a so-called black man, they had they had a dark skin a bit. Actually, even then, I'm talking shit. Because even back then, the heathen as well, they would look the same way. Jake basically having dark skin, woolly hair has never basically meant that you're an Israelite. Israelites always had a variety of looks at all times. What is it? Jeremiah says, "My heritage is unto me as a speckled bird." Jacob's always had variety amongst all the tribes, even just among Judah. Among so-called black men, you'll have ones that are lighter, ones that are darker, ones that have woollier hair, coarser hair, ones that have straighter hair. That's basically been a normality. But it's only really in this modern time where, because of that, that name black that's been put on Jake, they've switched it up. So it says what? And so tares. So it says, "So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares?" And he said unto them, "An enemy hath done this." The servants said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. But let both grow together until the harvest. Yeah, and that's the harvest is what? The time of end. Yeah, until the time of the harvest. The harvest is the time of the end. That's what we're approaching now, and that's when it's going to be separated. You have those black-faced, tar-faced Edomites are going to be exposed. They're going to be made to dance. You know, the angel's going to have the what do they say, the sickle. The angel's going to have the sickle. He's going to be holding it to them. He's going to be like, yo, dance. He's going to say, do an Irish jig to the white boy, and the white boy is going to do a legendary Irish jig, and he's like, hey, cool. Then you're going to have the black, tar-faced Edomites, where they're going to try and dance. They're going to be like that video of that white kid, where you have all the kids dabbing. You have the Gen kids dabbing, and they're doing it naturally. Then you have the one white kid where he tries to dab, and he just goes like, and then there's no spirit there, there's no flavor. He's going to be exposed, man. Because why? Basically, that confusion of face. That's all. That's for the present time. Because why? This is a time of when faith
Confusion.
is basically. Well, it's a time of confusion. It's also where it's dealing with the truth. It comes down to faith. You can't just lean on the fact, oh, you know, I'm a dark skinned with an afro, I'm an Israelite. Because now it's just not about being an Israelite. It's about being of the elect.
And it just as kind of it being a time of confusion, that's one of the main things of confusion, the melanated people. That's something that Jake buys into. Would you have a conversation with Jake, the so-called pro-black or something like that, what they'll say to themselves, oh yeah, the melanin gives us strength. Animals have melanin. Every nation on this earth has melanin, aside from one, right?
Yeah,
So how much strength does it really give you?
It's not that big a deal, bro.
Yeah.
Esau's just he's got the curse
Esau
of
can
leprosy.
gain
That's
melanin. You can actually lay with a so-called black woman, and a few generations down, an Edomite gene will become melanated. Why can't they tap into spiritual power, a high awareness of being? No.
That's why. What was it? Was it last year when you had Negro Solstice, man? Or was it the year before? When you had
First time I heard of that,
making
man.
memes saying, like, oh, on the 21st of December, we're gonna get superpowers and all making.
Yeah, before the last one.
Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah,
bro,
Negro Solstice.
that's all that stupid ass black nonsense. But that's why it's like that identity of black. That's why you have to be Hebrew Israelite. Because if you just call yourself black, that's confusion. That's why they'll have like conversations like, oh, is you know, they'll have someone who's obviously a fucking Jake. They come down the line for a Jake, but then because they're light skinned, they say, oh, you know, can you really count them as black? You know, and isn't their skin a bit too light? They haven't really experienced the same thing.
Yeah,
Like, nigga,
yeah.
shut the
That
fuck
don't
up,
matter.
man. It's not because of your skin color. It's because of the curses. That's why these things happen. These things happen because of the curses. So in Isaiah 14, 21, it says, prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, and cut off Babylon, the name and remnant, and son and nephew, saith the Lord Yahweh. Yeah. Just as the old Babylon got cut off, then the Medes came in and brought that shit to an end. The new Babylon's also going to be cut off, and this modern American system, that's all going to be brought to an end. All these different nations coming together, that EU, NATO link-up, that's all also going to be cut off. Because why? Now they've been set up for the time ahead now. They're going to be 2,300, where you still got EU and NATO around. Esau is not going to be involved. These things are for this time. And as well, really, that's why that's the pride of Esau. Because Psalms 49:11. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to generations. They call the lands after their own name. Yeah, Esau basically is thinking he's gonna be ruling forever. He's thinking his house is basically established forever. But that's a form of he's been deceived, man. He's been hoodwinked. Satan's telling him fibbies. Because why? That's the mindset he's in. He's thinking he's gonna set the Corona system, get this new world order system in, and then he's gonna be ruling forever. But hey, that's a lie. That's nonsense. Now grab the Jeremiah 51. This one.
Jeremiah 51:1. Thus saith the Lord. Jeremiah 51:1. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I'll raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind.
Yeah, and you have destroying as well, which is mentioned in Revelation 4, a destroying wind. Because basically you have what? The destruction being held back by 4 angels. And that's something that's basically holding back, because what's it waiting for? The sealing of the elect. Then what prophecy to be hit with? The main one is what? The corrupt one. That MOTP. That's basically something that needs to be fulfilled. Hey, then it's open season on destruction. And that's the thing, is that's going to be the grueling, excruciating pain everyone's going to be feeling, man. Right now, people are still able to go and dead themselves to the world and pleasures. They can go out, you can find something entertaining to do. You can go to Time magazine, you can look through and find all forms of entertainment, at this present time. When that hour of temptation comes, all that's going to come to an end. You might have a few people like in, what's it called, Children of Men, where you had the guy, I think it was his cousin.
It's really the prophecy of Matthew 24. As in the time of Noah, so shall it be. Many will eat and giving, drinking, living a mad life. Society's going to be functioning to the point where, oh shit, America was destroyed. And, all the people are going to lament that they can't make money off it no more. But they're going to have some form of normality functioning in society. But to what degree and what level, that's a whole different kind of thing. But again, it's like right now you have people that are like suffering. Like crazy suffering. There's people that are living on food banks right now. But for the most part, you got something, not for the most part, but you got other people whose life hasn't changed. It's just
Everything
business as
continues
usual.
as it was.
Yeah.
And that's in 2 Peter as well. Life is, probably grab it. We're gone.
Jeremiah, you forgot. Verse 2.
I intentionally didn't bring it because it's mild enough.
See, that's how I feel today. I will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they should be against her round about.
Yeah, so everyone's going to flip it on America, man. Everyone's basically going to be like, yo, the thing is there's various nations that have a bone to pick with America for good reason. And they're basically going to be put in remembrance of that. Just like with Russia, where Russia's spirit, Ezekiel 38, they've had the hooks in the jaw to where they've been put in remembrance, to where they're like, oh, okay, so this is what do you call it now? This is they're going back to that adversarial relationship. It's funny as well because you had that period of time where Medvedev and Obama, where these guys were getting fucking burgers together, having a chill, having some iced tea, sweet tea, but that all came to an end, man. When Putin came in, that guy made sure he couldn't leave office ever again, man. That has changed the law. Every time his term is going to come to an end, he's basically changed the law to where he can stay in power. Because he's like, yo, I'm looking to make. He's thinking about the Russian Empire, man. He's thinking make Russia great again. And that's why all these nations are going to be flipped. Europe as well. They're basically gonna have the spirit put on them to where they're what? They're gonna flip.
Verse 3. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in his brigade, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her hosts. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. For Israel have not been forsaken, nor Judah of his power, of the Lord Yahweh of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel.
That's the thing. Is even now. This is the fervent desire of Esau. Esau wants to see Israel fully. What's the term that you think of child?
Expelled? What? Expelled?
Nah. When you kick them out of your family, disowned. See Israel fully disowned by the Most High. Because just like in what's it called?
Oh yeah.
In Isaiah, where it basically goes into how basically the Lord's no more going to be dealing with Israel. They want it to be where it's like never, and then Israel's just gonna have no hedge around them, and the Lord's never going to be looking to deal with it, and it's going to deal with Esau instead. But then it's that would make the Most High a liar. And that's the thing. Esau is not the one. Even if Israel's done away with, there's no reason why Esau needs to be the one. That's why that like it said, the Most High can raise up stones to basically come worship him, man. That's why it's like Esau's the wicked man. He's got his role, he's got his job, man. And that's the thing. They're being wicked among Jacob. That's for the time. Because they're gonna get their judgment.
Verse 6. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord Yahweh's revenge. He will render unto her a recompense.
Yeah, that's it. Like it says, should be joined onto Babylon. Read it again, son. Yeah,
Verse 6. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense.
That's it. Now's not the time to be, thinking about going for that job, where you're like, okay, let me try and pay off this house or whatever. It's like you need to do what you need to do. It's like you need to get a house. And it's like, but your mind's not meant to be where you're
Second Ezra 16 and 40. He that planteth as if he would not, he that soweth as if
basically you need to be doing things, because we need to survive. It's like we need to, it says what, using but not abusing the world. You need to put, to put a roof over your head, to be able to eat, to be able to clothe yourself.
It goes back to what you said, to rise you in the path of the rest. It means mentally take yourself out of the place. It's funny because I had a conversation, I had a question posed to me about would you regret if you died, what would you regret if you died at this moment? And I said, I really wouldn't regret nothing, because that would lead to cowardice. It's more because then I'll be seeking to rectify that wrong, make right that wrong, basically. So I said that really the right thing to do is to just accept the fate of the situation. Okay, it's what it is, And why did I mention that? Yeah, about the mindset. Your mindset has to be like, look, man, it's and that's me to the point of, look, it's time's up, time to go, kind of thing. So it's the same with like doing this because it's daily bread. It's of necessity for your survival in this place.
to be able to do the work. Yeah. Go on.
Verse 7, Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord Yahweh's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations are drunken of her wine. Therefore the nations are mad.
Yeah, all these nations are basically partook in the system. They've joined onto it. What's the result in? Insanity. It's funny because a good example of the shift that happened is Afghanistan. Because you had the American occupation for the longest. They basically westernized it. They put in all forms of switches to basically Americanize the spot. But as soon as the Taliban came back in, they done out all that shit.
And now they're working on recognizing the Taliban as a political party.
Yeah, which is just like, what the fuck? It was all for naught.
So that shows you the point that you said about the Taliban being basically about the Americanization that they put to that place. It's all in vain because the people you're fighting against have now taken over and they're putting everything in. They're putting a rule in place that opposes everyone set in place prior by America.
But then with the folly of that as well is what with it's like, even though they're all that they set up, because it's like the main thing I was thinking is like they said that they had a bunch of women's sports teams were done out. Girls couldn't even go to school anymore. It's like they said there was a bunch of gay men that were living in Afghanistan where now they were fearing for their lives. And that was the thing. It's like, imagine all that so-called change. It seemed great and glorious in the moment. But then it's like that's really just wine that comes with dealing with the Babylonian system. Once that's done away with, all that's going to be done away with. They ain't gonna be messing with that. That's how cold it's going to be. Read on.
Verse 8. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain. If so, she may be healed.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What they're trying to do is what? They're trying to restore Babylon. They're trying to make some kind of way wherein Babylon can be saved, where there's salvation for the system, for this kingdom, for this religion. They're trying to make it cemented, make it last forever, despite prophecy showing. It's just for now. Now it's a little season. It's going to be out and about. Then it's done. But it's what all the means by which you're doing that. They're like it's not going to bear any fruit. Because that's the thing is people are losing their minds. They're bugging, man. It's getting to the point where men don't even want to be men. Women don't even want to be women. And it's like once it hits a certain point, you ain't even have enough fucking people on the earth. And the funny thing is where's that taking root? It's like in the West. So if it was to run, then man will be dying out, and then people just to be like, yo, we're gonna have to institute. We'll go like what Handmaid's Tale, where they just be like, yo, we're just gonna have to organize and have certain people dealing with X amount of women and bringing about a certain amount of babies, etc. Because you'll realize like everyone's gonna die. And that's what it says. If the days weren't short, there'll be no flesh left to be saved. But it's funny because that's the third week in a row when someone's fucking crashed. Shit's hilarious.
Jeremiah 51:9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country.
Yeah, they would have healed Babylon. It's not, it can't be healed. And that's the thing. It's just like ancient Babylon. It had its time. But the writing was on the wall. Many passing. It was basically said like, yo, it's done. You've been found, weighed, and measured. And then it's like, hey, your land's been portioned off to the meats. It's done. It's a wrap. It's the same thing for now. Like once the hour of temptation comes, once everything gets close, Esau's really going to be thinking like, yo, I might actually get this. Because it says what Lord's going to rain, his wrath upon him whilst he's eating. When his belly's, he's about to fill his belly. He's thinking like, yo, I'm really going to get this in. This might happen. It's like, yo, the Most High is really with me on this. Then it's all going to be flipped. And that's the thing, it's going to come as a shock. It's going to come. People are really not going to be expecting. They're going to be like, wait, what those blacks? What them spicks? What them? That long. That's going to be the shock and awe. But that's how the Lord wanted to go down. Because with Yahushua, it's like, who now is really out here looking for Yahushua to return? No one's looking for Yahushua to return.
Except for the men that are in faith.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because in the world, no one's looking for Yahushua to return. Anyone that's looking for it, they're thinking of Caesar. And they're thinking basically it's just going to be like, they're going to be jumping around in flower fields, man. In white garments, man. Dude, they have no clue of what that's going to be. We're going to finish all this.
So verse 9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let her go, and let us go everyone into his own country. For a judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. Yeah, the Heavenly Father told you that in the book of 2nd Ezra, in the chapter. About, or 2nd Ezra, I don't say 2nd Ezra, where basically, the measures, the threshold been met, basically. It says, and the Lord said, I'll hold my tongue no more concerning the things which they commit. So we're seeing that happen now, right? It's basically, we're heading into the time of the hour of temptation, Jacob's trouble, right? And that's why you can see with everything going on with World War III, that's not going to happen. That shows you again, it's like birth, the birth pains. This is just the onset of the end. You can see how close it is because World War III is about to break out. I just see something on social media where the guy is basically marketing his event. What he's actually saying is, in case of World War III pops off today or tomorrow, he said, come out and party with me. It ain't gonna pop off anytime soon.
Like it's the end of the world.
The main prophecy of the RFID of the Karagma, the mark, has to come to pass. Alright? But there may be a skirmish, there may be, a battlefront that, spills over, but World War III isn't yet. Right? There's key prophecies that have to come to pass before that can happen. And that's why we still have to be out on the highways and byways. There's certain people, they see certain things happen. They say, yeah, we don't have to go out no more. It's like, no, we got to go out and teach, man. Until the time, until the end time. So we can't do it no more.
Yeah. Close up on that.
Yeah.
Say all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Ba'akadash. Up on us to the apostles, now to bring us from the world.
Shalom. Next week, Lord willing.